Welcome to the DingeCast. We are driven by a passion for discovery and the belief that history should be uncovered. Our mission is to reveal the hidden realities of the past to bring history into the light. Welcome to the DingeCast.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the DingeCast. We are joined tonight by Dr. Tiffany Bannworth. And David really wanted to be here. He was in a car accident. He's okay. So it's just going to be the two of us tonight, and you will have David back on for the next one. But Dr. Tiffany is the founder of the Bannworth Academy of Classical Education. If you watched the first episode with her, you know that she is a biblical archaeologist and paleontology expeditionist with a passion for chasing the past and uncovering hidden truths. She's best known for her motto, which I love: has trowel, will travel. She is an adventure chaser in literally every sense. You just got back from like the dinosaur thing in Utah. I'm jealous of your life. So, widowed mother of 8 God-sent children. She's also a Christ-believing instructor and museum educator who can ignite wonder in any audience. Even if it's just one person, even if it's just me, she'll still entertain me. So whether you're young or old, if there's a crowd, she will teach them. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We've got an awesome episode tonight. As you can see, we're going all the way back to ancient Egypt, one of our favorite places to go to. So thank you, Dr. Tiffany, for coming back on. I am so excited to cover this one with you. This is such an interesting topic, an interesting time in history. And without further ado, let me shut up. Let's just get into this because there's a lot to talk about tonight, and I don't want to delay this any further.
Okay, so we're talking about the afterlife in ancient Egypt. Osiris awaits the soul's trial in ancient Egypt, and we're going to actually go through. I'm going to start. I want to provocate that there are multiple lines of mythology in Egypt that sometimes overcross. And we're going to start out at creation so I could demonstrate that, bring on our major players, and we'll talk about what happens in mummification before we dive deep into the travels within the Duat. And if you stay tuned long enough, then I'll actually go through some of the secret names that you would have to know to make it through the Duat before finally making it to the very end.
Excellent.
Of the reeds, the field of golden reeds.
And if there's any just timeline placement for people, I mean, I guess we're looking at around 2400, 2300 BC when this might take place, or is that debatable?
Well, according to them, this is the beginning of time. So we're going to start where they believe it is the beginning of time. So,
okay. All right, so let's just dive in, and I'll have questions along the way for sure.
Okay, so there's 2 creation myths that we want to touch on tonight, which I'll go into depth of both. So depending on what you're prescribing to, there's Ra, who is also being called Atum, which is very close to Adam in the Garden of Eden and the biblical background. It has like the same type of vibe, but this is more of an evocative and even provocative way to go about creation, where essentially there was just chaos. In the Bible, it talks about how the Bible is actually kind of a combination of Ptah and Ra's creation story, because it talks about in the Bible about how there's a creation ex nihilo, solely by the sound of his voice, and then he out of nothingness became something, as opposed to here with the 2 differences. There is the nothingness, the watery chaos, which is like water that is magical, and then up arose a Ben stone that's like becomes like an island that Atum or Ra is placed on. And then we're going to go in a second over how he created both Shu, who is the of air, Tefnut, moisture, and then how Geb and Nut with earth and sky, which is Geb and Nut are going to be very important into our lineage. And then there's the other version of, so we see like an Adam alone in a garden type of thing in the Bible, and we see Atum alone on an island that's emerged out of the watery chaos in the Ra. Now, if we go to the Ptah, we have basically a creation through ex nihilo, through either spoken word or thought, even like psychic creation, where he formed everything either by speaking names verbally with his tongue or in his heart, meaning that he thought it into creation. Both myths coexisted, but depending on which one that you prescribe to, there's like different lineages of who each of these players are. So when we go through these, I'm going to pick one definitive one to follow all the way through in this thought process. But like you may have heard stories of other stories about Horus or a different way that Ra went about this or a different version of Set, and that's because of the divergence in the paths of mythology. So let's go to the next one. So let's talk about Ra. Ra, who is Adam, is a self-creative God. He emerged. He had no partners. He just was created. Different from the Bible, because the Bible, the God isn't created. He just existed forever. Atum is thought to have just emerged from himself, that he just decided that he was going to be where he was, inexplicable. So here's the caveats where it gets kind of to the provocative side of it. It talks about how he created Shu and Tefnut out of his own body. In some versions, any type of air passage, whether he shooed, sneeze, or he sneezed, shoo, or breathed out, or a gust of wind, or a cough, any type of air passage from the body in the face was how she was created. But in Tefnuts, there are a couple of different versions. Basically, moisture that's left his body, saying that every part of him is divine, whether it was coughing and he hacked up mucus at the time of coughing to make shu, whether it's vomit, or and in a lot of them, it is divine masturbation and the semen, using his hand as a consort. The semen was what became Tefnut, which does carry on because there are myths where some people believe it was ritualistically carried out and some people believe it was physically carried out. But later on, you'll see in Egypt where, whether you believe it's ritualistic or literal, that the pharaoh of the time used to masturbate publicly while everyone was watching into the Nile River, and that basically the Nile River would become pregnant and would be able to overthrow and make that black Kemetic soil as opposed to the Deshret red soil that was barren. And so that was an important annual to do of masturbation publicly by the pharaoh. So a lot of people more prescribe to the divine masturbation in the original creation and why it ties into masturbation with the pharaoh later. But there's a different sect of people that believe that either via the coughing creation, that he either coughed so hard that Shu came out that it made him vomit, or mucus came out, and that's the other version of it. So both of them, just realize the hand is sometimes personified as a goddess and a consort. So that's how he is one that created everything. So these are divine wills of creative expression through word, breath, and will.
Which
All
is
right, let's
almost
go
like to I believe I've seen hieroglyphic depictions of semen. I don't or of sperm.
yeah,
I don't know how accurate that is, if it's just an interpretation, but that they obviously valued understanding that this is where life comes from, and
yeah.
maybe we're honoring it in some way. But even
I'm
just
of the I'm of the perception that there was real masturbation happening in the Nile thing and not figurative masturbation.
yeah, and just the
Because
the
it,
creation itself is almost like the idea of manifestation, consciousness, right? That your
yeah.
evolution, your knowledge comes from manifestation. That you reach higher thinking just from envisioning it and then enacting it. So I love the parallels of this origin story to almost the evolution of human consciousness, our development of knowledge that we have today, like what separates us from other mammals, that kind of thing. So,
And nudity, it is important to say that nudity and stuff wasn't taboo back then, because oftentimes in ancient Egypt, the children stayed nude until they were weaned. And then also your royalness was how white you could keep your clothes. So a lot of times, if you did heavy labor, sometimes you would remove your white robe. Or if you're going to fight somebody, you would remove your white robe, because getting things white, it's not like you can shout it out in the ancient world, So they oftentimes, like, being nude in public wasn't necessarily a big hurrah as it would be seen today.
oh, for sure, for sure. Here, I'll jump to the next one for us.
So Ptah's creation myth is So, and you're going to see where the two titles of it come. So he's the patron god of Memphis. He created everything, God, humans, animals, cities, and temples. Not just so you see with Ra, it talks about how he just made those two people, and then basically it all shook out because they created stuff and they created stuff. But here it's talking about Ptah is literally creating everything with either thinking it or speaking it, verbal and mental creation, not physical. According to Shabbat Stone, it says that Ptah gave life to all the gods and their Kas, which we're going to, the Ka is their spiritual essence that is fed and stuff like that through his heart and through his tongue. The heart, the ib, is the seat of thought, the intention and will. The tongue, his is expression of command and manifestation. So he first conceived the want to make it, and then he either spoke it into existence by thinking clearly about what he wanted to do, or he literally spoke it forth. So it depends on who you pick. And then you look at the two, because some people prescribe specifically to the Heliopolitan or cosmogony or the Memphite theology. So based on sometimes where you were located, who the gods that you worshipped. Typically, you would pick the god that was more powerful under one of the two's lineages, and people basically knew of both. But if you lived in Memphis, then you would probably be of the Memphite theology type of thing. So that's why it's important. And I wanted to start out with this, that there are multiple ways that this shakes out, that it divides the divergent roads where you can have the mythology that goes according to what this god or goddess did. And for this iteration of it, we're going to be using the Heliopolis version, and we're going to use Ra. Okay, so they both exist. The stories can be seen through both versions, but for what we're going to work through today, we're going to talk about Ra, because Ra is more specifically instrumental with his solar bark through the traveling of the 12 hours of the Jawat. So we're going to use the Neapolitan version tonight. Okay. So this is important, and this is sad in this idea too. So there's Geb and Nut and the Forbidden Birth. So they're siblings, but in the gods version, there's lots of sister husbands and sister wives and brother husband type of situations so Geb and Nut loved each other. They were ordered not to have babies together. So Nut gets pregnant with 5 babies in her stomach. Shu, which is the wind, keeps them separate. So oftentimes you see this beautiful image of, Geb being the ground, and then Shu is kind of like making a C shape with her, like her hands and feet are here, and then her body is arcing like a rainbow, I suppose, and a beautiful night sky in the background, and they're forever separated. And supposedly, and later mythology, it says that Nut would, all of these beautiful combinations of stars or astronomical comets and stuff like that are all beautiful works or love stories to Geb that she can't be reunited with anymore. So Ra actually gets cursed by Nut and says that she's not going to be allowed to give birth ever. And so Thoth, who is known for his wisdom, and felt as though he sided with the fact that they were in love and they should be able to procreate or whatever. And she's already pregnant. It's not like he separated them before she got pregnant. She's already pregnant. So Thoth goes before Khonsu and asks for 5 extra days, the epigenomenial days. However, it is important to say, which we'll say this in a second. So the 5 children that she's pregnant with is, which are the main players of our story tonight, is Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus the Elder, which is different from the Horus that we're going to talk about. Right. Let's go to the next page. So they knew that there was 365 days in ancient Egypt. Okay. So they used a base number system of both 12 and 60. And a lot of the Mesopotamian era civilizations did as well. So 360 was perfect. It was divisible by tons of different numbers they wanted to use. It was divisible by 12, it was divisible by 60. It was ideal. So they did 12. As you can see, it's perfect cosmic order, 12 months, 30 days, 360 days. So they knew about these 5 extra days. They came up you would think that possibly they came up after the fact with a way to explain away why there are 5 extra days that exist outside of their perfect order of time. Those 5 extra days that are outside of time were considered days of high magic, where you could do, where you needed the highest amount or the least amount of separation between the world of the gods and the world of the living. And so the highest amount of magic, you would do it on these 5 days. And those are said to have been won by Thoth from Khonsu. And those are also the days that Nut gave birth, one on each day of each of those 5 children.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, too, their weeks were in 10-day increments instead of 7, which also helped to keep
Yeah,
everything aligned.
exact. Yeah,
Were
because you
those?
figure
Go
the
ahead.
30 is not divisible by 7, you know. So it would
Exactly.
not make sense for it to be perfectly divisible if you're going to do a 7-day week on a 30-day month.
Exactly. You would need a 13-month calendar and a 28-day
Which
calendar.
there is a 13-month calendar out there.
Exactly. There's yeah. My other question was, are all 5 of these days consecutive, or were they kind of
Yeah.
spaced out in the calendar?
A lot of people believe that it is at the end of the calendar. And not that I would prescribe, because remember, our days are divided differently than the ancient Egyptian day. So we have 365 days, but our months are broken up differently. But a lot of people prescribe to the concept that of the 5 days, that Horus was born on December 25th, and that, I mean, I believe through archaeological evidence and ancient writings that Jesus was born in September or August, but probably September in the high holy days, because it talks about how Mary, to ease the pain of labor, she ate a fig or a date, and those were fruiting in September or August. So I believe it was September during the high holy days. But the prescription of December 25th is a lot of different gods in ancient times' birthday. And so one of the day that Horus was supposedly born was December 25th. And you know, Saturn for Saturnalia and stuff like that as well. But
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
idea for us is I believe it's at the end of the year, but for us, why would Horus be born on the 25th? Because that wouldn't even be the last 5 days of the year, because you got December 31st. So it's like slightly off, but the times are divided differently. But supposedly Horus's birthday is modern day December 25th.
Interesting.
And
Interesting. I
so
think
I think it's at the end of the year.
Krishna in Indian mythology is also the 25th. I don't remember for sure, but I
There's
think
a lot of them.
it
But
is
and in
interesting
the
though.
Bible, New Year is a different, like, that's also New Year's wasn't when we have New Year's like now, because even in the Bible, there's two different New Years. There's like with Rosh Hashanah, and there's Rosh Hashanah, and then there's also the Passover as two different beginnings of the year. But there's in Egypt, it was there they only had 3 seasons, and it was based on the flooding, the flooding of the Nile, and then the planting of all of your seeds, and then the harvesting of all of your seeds. So their new year was based on when the Nile was going to flood, and I don't believe it would be December 31st and
No, no,
November or
like
January 1st,
March 1st or
So
something,
it
right?
was so as a weird non-consolidated answer, I guess it would seem like it was at the end of at the end of our year cycle by just serendipity, but it would not necessarily be right before the Nile floods in their calendar.
Right, right. I know that's like a murky topic. I just figured it just in case I would ask if we had any clarity on that. I know it's still highly debated.
So I wanted to differentiate that, because a lot of people are like, later in the story we're going to say how Horus came into creation, but there's Horus the Elder, which we really don't talk much about, and who knows if it's not just a clashing of two mythology lines on why we now have to differentiate Horus the Elder from Horus the Younger. So it could just be that in one line of mythology that Horus was an original creation of Nut, and then because he becomes famous in the new story, now we've diverged him into the Elder and the Younger. Or it could be that there's just Horus the Elder, which we really don't talk that much about, and Horus the Younger, who is very important to the history of Egypt and the mythology of Egypt. So for the only time basically we're mentioning Horus the Elder, we've already done. And for all intents and purposes moving forward, we're going to be talking about Horus as Horus the Younger.
Yeah, which is a wild story for sure.
So before we even get into that, we're going to talk about how every night Ra took a nightly journey on his solar bark through the 12 hours of the night, because you know the days, 12 hours of the day, 12 hours of the night. Even if it's not necessarily dark for 12 hours, the understanding is that he did this journey every night for 12 hours. And essentially, as he travels through the Duat, that if he isn't successful at keeping Apophis, Apep back, that night and chaos and darkness will rule, and there will be no light, there'll be no order, there'll be no natural function, because it's a serpent of chaos that seeks to destroy. There's actually something in, I don't remember the movie, I think it starts with an L, but there's a book by Stephen King where it's like the longer, starting with an L, there's like where you see like time and chaos and static, or like it was like a movie I saw when I was a kid where it's like chasing people
Oh,
and
the
you get
Langoliers?
Langoliers. It's very
Yeah,
similar
yeah.
to that concept. Is the it's like if Apophis were to catch up with creation, just like the Langoliers, it would just destroy everything. But in a lot of stories and in basic physics now, like if we're talking quantum physics, if there's something like a black hole that destroys all of the creation, nothing can escape it, then there's often on the other side of the black hole a white hole that spits out the building blocks to a new creation. So to say that if Ra lost would not necessarily mean the destruction of existence, but it would be the destruction of existence that we know it spat back out as building blocks, very similar to the concept of black holes and white holes. So Set, who is often seen as evil, wasn't seen as evil yet. So originally he would ride on the solar bark with Ra, and he was like there as his like battle buddy, that if anything happened to Ra, Set was going to fight off Apophis. And one time Apophis did almost best him, and Set saved the day. So in ancient, before this problem with Osiris begins, he was actually used in like love spells and love incantations before he was seen for chaos and disorder. So now he's seen it. So after he makes the jump in the Osiris story that we're going to get into, the concept then became that even as he made the jump, that Ra was considered in his most powerful time at this, that he would be able to control Set no matter what, who's sometimes called Seth as well, but Set is really, I believe, the true version of his last name. And as I said to you before we started, it's kind of like a little bit different, to where Ra is unable to control Sekhmet, because Sekhmet was sent as like his holy emissary, his warrior emissary, to when people were starting to disobey him, that he had sent Sekhmet out to go and force people to obey him. But then she became bloodthirsty and she was killing everybody in her sight. So Thoth said to Ra, if you kill everybody, there's no one to rule. So someone has to stop her, but she refused to stop. As the gods came to speak with her, she would try to kill them too. And Ra at this point doesn't seem as though he's powerful enough, maybe, which goes to our point later in the schedule, that maybe being spoken, worshipped in this type of surroundings makes you more powerful. In the time where he has to send out Sekhmet to defend his honor and make people obey, it seems as though he's been weakened at this point, to where he can't control Sekhmet. And then they end up coming up with Thoth, who's so wise, a ploy to take beer or some sort of alcoholic beverage of that sort, fermented beverage, dye it red so she believes it's blood. She drinks a ridiculous amounts of it, falls into a drunken slumber, and then Ra is able to go in over her and change her characteristics, and she wakes up as Hathor, who instead of being the battle kitty, she ends up waking up as like a cow-headed goddess who is known for motherhood and kindness and protection of children. So it completely changes all of her attributes during this drunken slumber. But the idea is, at one point, he was able to fight off Apophis and control Set, even if he also too diverged into chaos. Because you would imagine that Set, as he becomes known as chaos, why would he be fighting Apophis, who wants chaos? It would seem as though they should band together and destroy the joint, but instead, Ra is able to control Set and have basically his version of chaos with light combined fight against the chaos of Apophis.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it is
yeah.
kind of weird that he never, no matter how bad he was and the things that he did with Osiris, he never left Ra, which makes no sense because it's like he should have. He should have joined Apophis's side.
Yeah. Interesting. I guess if what is it? There's no honor among thieves. It's kind of like that. Like it's like
Yeah, but
chaos.
he does. He's honorable.
Yeah, I know. I know. I can't think of
He does the
a good.
opposite. He
Yeah.
stays true to Ra anyway, even
Yeah,
though
that is
Ra didn't
interesting.
intercede really. I mean, the only thing that is he didn't let Osiris come back to the land of the living, but he doesn't intercede because, it is kind of a dirty deal for Set the whole way. But you always have a choice when things are bad. You have a choice whether to, and act enraged or act with wisdom and peace. And he
Yeah.
didn't. Like we made the comparison earlier. It was like in Star Wars terms that he left being a Jedi and was consumed by the dark side, but he never goes against Ra.
That's super interesting. All right, let me hop to Osiris here.
Okay, so the murder of Osiris. This is important. So Osiris, who I believe is seen as a younger brother, was put into. So it would seem as though Set has this really glorious job. The supreme god of the time, Ra. He used to ride on his solar bark. He's actually saved his life. Everybody's doing spells for love spells with him, and he's got what is considered the superior job. He's like the the guy who is the enforcer. He's even saved the supreme god before. So it would seem as though everybody should really honor and adore Set. He should be the one that all the ladies are like drooling over and stuff. But that's not what happened. Instead, Osiris was the opposite of Set. He ruled with kindness. He basically has a golden age of Egypt where during his ruling he was just and he was wise and he was everything that you imagine. Everything that you imagine that you want in a ruler. Just he is everything. He's faithful to Isis. So I should say, which we haven't mentioned yet, is that they end up marrying. So Set and Nephthys are married, even though everybody here is siblings. Set and Nephthys get married, and Isis and Osiris get married. And like I said, we don't really talk about Horus the Elder um, anymore. So they're married, but the thing is like he'd be the cool warrior, and Osiris is just like a kind king who does stuff on Earth. But for whatever reason, not only does the whole living people do they all go, oh my gosh, Osiris is the best. He is so cool. He is this, he's really honored and venerated. But Nephthys, who is Set's wife, also is consumed with. There's two different versions, and I'm going to try to stick to one, but in this instance, I'm going to denote the divergence. Is that there are two stories why Nephthys desperately wants to get pregnant by Osiris. Okay, so there's number one, that she just also was not under an entrance version of him, but he was so great that she wanted to bear his child, that she was in love with him, that she wanted the opportunity to. I said it was provocative to have sex with him, to experience him, and so she, through magic and incantation, is able to change her essence, her the way she smells, the way she looks, the way she speaks, and she appears as her sister Isis. She goes in before Osiris, who is a loving and faithful husband. Again, there's no fault found in him. And she goes and she has sex with Osiris and gets pregnant with Osiris. And this is where Anubis comes to be, because that is the baby inside Nephthys' stomach, who is Osiris's son with Nephthys. So before we move on to it, the other iteration is that whether she was madly in love with Osiris or not, it is said in some circles that she wanted a son who would be able to overthrow Set, and that Set was getting more chaotic, more, more of not of a spouse that you want, and she wanted a son that was powerful enough to overthrow him. So instead of having a son with him, poor Horus the Elder is just over there being ignored, but everybody's after Osiris, and she gets pregnant with Osiris. So either way you look at it, she's pregnant, and she's got Anubis in her stomach, and Anubis, somehow Set is able to detect that there is a baby in her stomach that is not his own. So it's through his godlike qualities. It is not because he found out, it's because he is able to just determine by some sort of magic that she's carrying a baby and that it is not his. So he is now, this is where we see the dark side taking over. He was already jealous. He didn't understand why Osiris had such a fanfare when he's the one who's saving Ra. He's just some guy who rules the living. Well, so what's the big deal? I do this magnificent feat every night. I'm next to Ra. We go into war. We're fighting back chaos. There would be no land for Osiris to even rule justly if I let Apophis come through and destroy, creation. So why is he getting the fanfare? So he was already had this growing inside him, which is a possibility of why Nephthys was looking to find someone to impregnate her with a child that would be strong enough to overthrow Set, because that jealousy was brewing him. The dark side was growing in him, but this sent him over the top. So he decides that he is going to. This is very similar to Cain in the Bible. This is the first murder planned ever, and he is planning on how he's going to kill Osiris. So he decides that he's going to throw a party in his honor, in which Osiris is going to be celebrated, and nobody knows yet nobody knows that Set knows about Anubis and utero. So we're assuming that Osiris is very excited. He trusts his brother. He's a good guy. He didn't even cheat because he thought it was his wife. So again, Osiris is very innocent. He has come up with this plan that he's hatched to make a sarcophagus that is specifically to the body shape of Osiris. And Osiris, and they say he knows the measurements through magic. So Osiris, everybody in the party gets in, and it says that this really ornate sarcophagus, that whoever fits into it is going to get to keep it. And where are we going on the slides?
So no, I was trying. I knew that was in here. I was trying to find that part.
No, it's in the bed. Go back to where we were because we're going too fast. So then everybody gets in it, and it doesn't fit anybody. And the second that Osiris gets into, it's like bam, it closes on him. The people who worked for Set sealed it shut. There's two different versions. There's one version, which is the one we're going with, is that chains or magical chains came around it and dragged him into the Nile River to kill him. There's another version that said he was dragged to Duat directly. But the one we're going with, and this line of thinking, is that he was taken into the Nile where he's floating around, drowns. His body becomes entwined in a tree in Phoenicia, where the king of Byblos cuts down that tree to make a pillar. And then he happens to be in the pillar because he's inside it and he's being hidden. So Isis is desperate to find her husband because, again, she is innocent as well. And at this point, there was a lot of war between Nephthys and Isis. Like, why would you do this? And Nephthys is contrite. She didn't mean for all of this to happen. She definitely didn't want to destroy Osiris, doesn't want to lose her relationship with Isis, could care less about Set. So then they're banded together, Team Osiris still, to go find the body. So it says that Isis transforms into what looks to be like a common human, and she wanders to Phoenicia, and she goes and she laments to the queen of Byblos and says, can I remove my husband from here? And she does through magic. So then Set loses his darn mind and says, I can't believe that you went and got his body. So in two different ones, he cuts up his body. Okay. And in some places it says into 14 pieces, in some places it says into 16 pieces. But this is also, there's something very similar to it in the Bible. In the Bible, it talks about how there was a Levite priest who had a concubine, and the concubine was not treated well by her Levite husband or whatever he is to her. And she escapes and runs back to her father. So the priest comes all the way back to the father and says, "Hey, give me back my wife." And at the end of the day, he ends up saying, "Yeah, here you go." Turns her over again. Not a very good father in my estimation, but that was the way it was at the time. So then they end up traveling back to, they're trying to travel back to where the Levite priest originally comes from, and he stops at a different place to spend the night. At that city that he entered, which was common in its day, that if a foreigner entered a different city, all the weirdos would come to rape the visitor. And so they wanted the man, the Levite priest, to sodomize and to rape. And as was also the custom of the day, is that horribly, it doesn't see it talks about it in the Bible, but never says this is the thing to do. It doesn't say that this is right. It says this is just what happened. But the custom of the day was usually to offer the virgin daughters. But in this estimation, which really made me sick and it makes you understand why the concubine ran away, the Levite priest and the guy who owns the house, who has nothing to do with her, so offers the concubine. So like a horde of men, lecherous men, they throw her out and they lock the door. And literally, it doesn't seem like the Levite priest is worried at all. He just goes to bed and has a restful night's sleep, like he averted a mob. And the other guy goes to bed too, so he doesn't care. So the concubine is literally raped to death all throughout the night. She is raped to death. And it says basically at the end of the night, when the sun's about to come up, she's like trying to crawl to the doorstep because they have raped her to death. And she dies on the doorstep. And basically it says that the Levite priest wakes up to leave the next morning, and he steps over her and goes, "Come on, let's get going." And then he realizes that she's dead. So he throws her body on the back of whatever he's traveling with, camel, horse, donkey. And that he was upset that they basically that they raped her to death, because he expected her to be raped and then come back and live with him after this. And so she's dead. So he cuts up, the Levite priest cuts up her body into 12 pieces and sends a piece of her body with the story of what happened to each of the 12 tribes of Israel, because Levite, the Levites also find out through him. But that's another iteration of the cutting up of the body and sent out. So that happens in the Bible. You can fact check it. But here, the body is cut into pieces, and it's sent to different, like each of the body parts were sent to different gnomes, so that you had a hard time finding it. And I want to look at the type of fish. So the penis, the phallus, is the one part that is never found, because it was thrown into the Nile on purpose, and it was eaten by a fish. So it's destroyed, it's processed, and it is the fish is said to either be a tilapia or the oxyrhynchus. And so this is, his penis is never recovered. And Isis, very upset, because Anubis is in the belly of Nephthys right now, so she wants her own baby. So she decides that she is going to make a golden phallus, a golden penis. And in some iterations, they say stone instead of gold, but the most popular one is gold. And it says that she turns into a bird, a falcon, and through magic, she hovers over the dead body of Osiris and is magically impregnated. And since she did it as a falcon, which is why Horus ends up becoming the falcon-headed god of Egypt. So that's how those two places tie in. Yeah. But the thing is, the problem with this is that, and why mummification is so important, is that if you don't have the whole body, you can't come back to the land of the living. It's not like his penis was kept in a canopic jar. And so even though Osiris is completely innocent, he was a good king, he didn't even sin. Although sin is not a word in Egyptian terminology, he didn't do anything wrong. He only thought he was being loyal to his wife, and then all this happened to him. He becomes put in charge of the Duat, and in charge of not even the Duat. He's put in charge of the entire underworld, even the field of golden reeds. But what's weird and bears mention, I don't know if, do you want to ask your question?
I
Right,
mean,
man, because I was gonna naturally say it.
yeah. No, I mean, there was just the two parts of like, um, people tried to pinpoint when they may have lived. Like, were these real ruling kings at one point that were later deitized, or were they always just a part of mythology as gods? Or, oh, the second question was just like the birth story, right? That you can't get pregnant from a castrated, dead, dismembered body and a golden dildo. So it was like, what's going on here? It's such a, I know it's like, magic, but if there was, if you want to believe that these were real people at one time and they weren't just gods, if these were the rulers of the land, what could be the possible interpretation here? Because this is such a wild story. I always like to try to find a physical, explanation for it if
Yeah,
there
tether point.
happens to be one.
See, but I'm not of the opinion that they were ever live people. I am of the opinion, though, looking through the lens of Christianity, that they're either cast out angels that were cast down that left with Hasatan, or they are a product of the Nephilim. Maybe like maybe Ra and some of the other creation gods might be one of the original angels, and that Neph or that the further down Nephthys and all them are products of the Nephilim, meaning when the Watcher angels impregnated the Earth women. Because I do believe, as is outlined in the Bible, that there were Egyptian gods that had actual power that that God Yahweh went to punish. So I believe that they are actual figures, but just as and the Bible talks about we don't fight against flesh and blood, but we fight against powers and principalities. I believe that each of these people, and that Israel was held back for Yahweh himself. I believe that each of these deities are actually have power and principalities in different areas that they rule over. And the other thing that I was hoping you would get to is that it says that Anubis caretakes Osiris's body, and essentially the sentiment is that the Duat and outside of the land of the living exists outside of time, which is essentially the same thing as the Judeo-Christian belief of heaven and the New Jerusalem. And so the moment that he becomes a creation, and that a Ka and a Ba are assigned to him, that he is in outside of time in the afterlife, he's already a full-grown Anubis that can he can go through time, and he's already a full-grown man. So he receives his own father, as when he's just in utero as Anubis, he receives his own father and does the funerary rites for him as well. And so you'll see that double up of why Anubis is able to be present. All it took was the moment of conception. That's for your abortion debates. Even in ancient Egypt, it was the moment of conception that
Yeah.
all of a sudden he was able to be a fully thriving and established ruler of the underworld, until Osiris, because of his sinlessness, was able to become the superior king. And also, Anubis was never given an opportunity to live in the land of the living because he was a product of adultery. He was an illegitimate child. And so he is punished through no fault of his own, again, because the sin goes with Nephthys,
Yeah.
not with Anubis, and the sin goes with Nephthys with Osiris. So both of them, though they're not allowed to dwell and live in the land of the living, become superior and elevated beings in the Duat. And so
Yeah.
that's an important
No, because
to mention.
that's why I wanted to ask you that one, because it's funny to imagine what the Egyptians at the time thought of these stories, because it couldn't be a linear timeline if
Right.
Anubis is Osiris's son but predates his existence. So it's like, hey, I'm your kid, but I was here before even you
Hmm.
were. And then just separate, like with Anubis, because I'm always trying to draw more parallels. And maybe
Yeah.
this is totally off base, so correct me if this doesn't make any sense, but he's almost like an ancient Egyptian Grim Reaper in the way he
Yes.
appears. It's like you're breathing your last breath, and I am. Let me take you to the afterlife. That it's
Yeah.
not
He specifically
sinister,
is.
but
You know,
I was like, he's literally the Grim Reaper in their
but
culture, in their timeline.
it's less dark in a way, even though he is
Yeah,
supposed to be the embodiment of darkness, he appears as a black jackal. Is that he's considered the psychopomp, Greek for psyche, meaning soul, and pompos as in leader or he literally is there to he's like a bodyguard almost through death because he leads you. He makes sure that there's no funny business on the way to the Hall of Ma'at. So like there are certain steps which we're going to go through what you have to say or do in certain steps of your 12-hour cycle. And if let's just say some of these people aren't good, Apophis decides to chaotically disobey what if you say the right name, you're supposed to pass through, and Apophis says, no, I'm going to destroy him anyway, then Anubis is there to make sure that fairness is the law. And so he will make sure that nobody oversteps their boundaries, that the soul he will not help you though, as in he's not going to give you hints. He's not going to give you passwords and secret names. He's not going to do incantations for you, but he's going to make sure that whoever is on the side of the living, whatever incantations and words that you say are justly imposed. So if you have that name, then you get through no matter what, no matter who comes against him. And he's second only to Osiris in this idea.
Yeah.
Of the getting through the duat.
Should I keep going, or are we on a good slide?
Keep going. We made it through. We made it through the golden penis. Now we gotta keep rolling here. So we did that. Okay, let's talk about the mummification process. So now we're talking about, now we know the background. All the players are basically put into place. We're talking about what happens now when the soul dies. So at the moment that you breathe your last breath, you die instantaneously. And it doesn't matter if multiple people die at once. You can't see the other people yet. And Anubis is with you immediately. So he is immediately with you for the moment you take your last breath. But he cannot take you through this journey until after you've been mummified and mummified properly. If you're not mummified properly, then you can't go on the journey, which then you become a mut, M-U-T, but pronounced mut, which is just kind of like a dead thing that's stuck in transition. So you have to be properly processed, and which sucks because in certain points, it was like in old Egypt, it was like just the pharaohs were mummified, and so everybody else was like, as far as they were concerned, got stuck in transition. And then there was, or got eaten up and disappeared from existence. And then it was like the rich people, and then it was like everybody. And even so there's different, you go to old, middle, and new, the new kingdoms, and then more and more people were able to be mummified in the process. So first they washed the bodies with palm wine and the Nile water. The Nile water specifically has representations of the gods that are associated with it, like Sobek and stuff like that. So it's like a divine blessing as well. There's canopic jars so they're going to take out, they go through and they take out parts of the body, which I think I go more in depth in the next scene, but they're going to take out your brain and your organs, and I'm going to talk about, they're going to take out your brain and organs. They dry you in natron, which is like a drying salt, for 40 days. Then they're going to they're going to anoint you with all types of oils. They're going to say incantations and spells, which we'll go over. They wrap you in linen. They also like shove your body filled with like sawdust and stuff like that too, which they kind of do in the real, I think they still do, because my husband was who passed away in a motorcycle crash when we had him embalmed so that we could say goodbye and like touch him, and they had completely overfilled him with whatever they do in modern day embalming, because he was like way bigger than he was in real life, and only something a wife would know, and then like his ribs and stuff were like, it was weird. So it's going to be important. There's something that I want to circle back to in a little bit, where you're protected with amulets and sealed with spells from the Book of the Dead, and the final ritual is the opening of the mouth to restore the senses. So let's keep going. We'll come back to these.
And just to like just to think about this, right? That would this be pre-dynastic Egypt, right? Like this is old practices.
Well,
I think there'd be a lot of trial and error that goes into learning the successful mummification process. So where did all of this knowledge come from even before that, right? Or I don't know. It's just an interesting.
No, but the commentary to it is it's supposed to be that the gods told you how to mummify and what spells were needed. But to go to your point, it is basically separated by who's going to commonly be mummified. So like in the oldest times of Egypt, it's just the pharaohs,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and then it's the rich people, then it's the common man. So it's more separated like that as opposed to knowledge. Because it seems like it's pretty much a lot. It's pretty much stays to the same concept with what they're doing, you know, as you can see in the writings on the wall and whatnot.
Okay, okay.
But so here, the purification of the body. There's a bunch of purification rituals, even so much as we see some writings on the wall where there's incense that's being, incensed over the body. You're always washed in the Nile, always washed with palm wine, which in general, we do know that even in times of like the Middle Ages, when the kings were eating meat that was possibly rotten, and they also used to do like where they would hang the meat and they would cut off, well, they still do it, where you cut off like the decayed parts so you get a more soft meat, and there was not a time of refrigeration. They would you drink the wine that the kings would drink would help with you not dying from food poisoning. And in the same concept, the wine is to believed to have purified the body and sorts. During so Anubis is in the spiritual realm, is literally standing there in the room. But the priests, especially during the opening of the mouth ceremony, they are putting on Anubis masks to perform these rites as well. And it's said basically to believe that maybe he infuses with them at those moments, and actually Anubis does the task himself, or like he's there just watching it. But the ritual, they preserve the body. It's supposed to last forever. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Um, then they remove brain. This is famous. I feel like even small children know this now, which I'm really
Yeah, they
excited to see. Yeah, that you shove a metal hook up the nose and you break it up and you bring it out of the nostril. It's liquefied, it's removed, it's discarded because believe it or not, they didn't think the brain was doing anything. They saw it would be something that rotted in the head. Now it says here some later techniques show evidence of pouring resin to fill the skull cavity or embalming fluids. And Zahi, like I said when I spoke to him last month, he had said that previously they believed that Tutankhamun's head, which had a wound on the back of it, like a hole, and also he had a broken femur, that they had believed that perhaps he was, hit on the back of the head, and that's why he died. But in fact, like I said, he's checking all of his mummies. He's running them through like MRIs. He's having modern day doctors write up forensic reports for them, and it has been determined that he died from infections and an unhealed femur, and that the hole on the back of his head was not a death blow or an assassination attempt, but rather it was how they poured the embalming fluids into his skull. So at the time, talking about how you said in the lineage of when they're doing the mummification process, this part of the mummification process was updated, and we can see the later technique being applied to Tutankhamun.
Yeah.
So that is here. And then it says that they would pack the head, the body, and everything with sawdust to maintain its shape.
Yeah.
So the evisceration. So they're removing the organs. Okay, there are certain organs that they thought was very important. They had a sacred blade that they were used to cut up the body and to remove these organs. There were gods that were, there's 4 canopic jars in all of the tombs. That there is one that has an seti on it that is supposed to, it looks like a human head. It has the liver in it as Hapi, which has a baboon head. It has the lungs in it. There's Duamutef, which has the jackal head on it, not to be confused with Anubis. I believe it's the son of, oddly enough, the sons of Horus. I think Duamutef and Quebesennuef is the falcon-headed god who has the intestines in it. So these are like, they're drying out too, but it's like, a good sized canopic jar to fit organs into it. But I believe Duamutef and Quebesennuef are the sons of Horus, who for some reason iterate like Anubis and Horus. But it says here that this is interesting, what I'm about to say. The heart's usually left in the body because you have to present it to Anubis for the weighing. However, if the people who knew you, like your royal court, or just like people who knew you later when the common man was being mummified, thought that you were a bad person, or thought that your heart would betray you, meaning that your heart was going to have to tell the truth in the Hall of Truths, in the Hall of Ma'at, and they thought that it would make you cease to exist. It would be heavier than Ma'at's feather. They took out the heart and they replaced it with a heart scarab instead, so that this thing would be blessed and be weighed instead of, because they knew you were not a good person.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I'm glad you said that because I was thinking, yeah, for the weighing of the heart, wouldn't, a replacement or a substitute just immediately void that? They're like, well, this isn't your real heart.
Right. And you would
So,
imagine that. And they know it. So they know what's happening. So in the Hall of Ma'at is going to be Anubis, Ma'at, and Thoth. And they know and Amit really. They know the jig's not up. Like they know why you're putting a heart scarab there. It could also be that
got
for
it.
some reason you were killed. You could be completely great. And let's just say you were like Osiris and it wasn't the penis that went missing, it was the heart. And you put the heart scarab there. But for the most part, I mean, these gods knew what you did in your life. It's mostly so your heart doesn't betray you on the weighing of the scales. But it all has to do with, because they will, depending on the Book of the Dead and the spells that you put into place, they have to honor the spells. So if the people who are living went forth to protect you with all of these armings of the correct spells, the correct names, and inciting the right gods, putting this heart scarab in there and saying the correct, giving you the correct negative, which we'll talk about, the negative confessions, then you get to get through anyway. And even if they know you were wicked. So if you don't, so even if you were good and there's nobody to prepare you, then it means that you might not make it through, even if you were good. So it's not necessarily like the Christian concept of who you are relates directly to God and you get a fair shake. This is basically who has the better sorcerer, the better embalmers, who has the people who are going to prepare you the most thoroughly or the education to do so. And it doesn't matter if you were the Wicked Witch of the West here. If you have all of your spells and stuff in place, you're getting through.
That's crazy. It's not who you know, or it's not what you know, it's who you know, even back then.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So we're talking about the body's been getting all the moisture out. It's literally mummifying, it's covered in natron. A lot of people think that the body looks like a decrepit, sucked in person because so many years have passed, but it looks like that in ancient times as well. They leave it on for 40 days, which interestingly enough, in the biblical concept is 40 days of judgment.
Hmm.
40 means
I was gonna say
judgment
40,
and
another
Hebrew.
significant number, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so it all kind of takes place, which makes it all kind of interconnects, which makes me wonder why, if some of these are people or deities that are because they're cast down angels and stuff like that, they seem to also play into it. But anyway, it says that the natron preserved the body by preventing decay, dehydrates it. After 40 days, the body was lighter, dried out, leathery, as what your modern day mummy looks like. Which, by the way, I have to say that there were a bunch more mummies, and it was very popular in the Victorian era, that everybody had a mummy party where you would just steal a mummy out of Egypt or wherever else you found it from. You would sometimes eat them. They would eat the mummy. They would use the mummy to make certain tincture paints and stuff like that, to where you could have a certain shade of, I think it's like a brownish yellow color, that it was like mummy yellow or something like that. Like, so there was a ton of mummies that were considered, but also realized that not everybody was a pharaoh or somebody significant, because in the new Egypt, the new kingdom, they had like modern day people being mummified. So like, who cares if Tom, Joe, and Sally, are getting taken? But you don't know, because there were so many robbers in both ancient and modern day, that all of their identifying markers are being removed, and all of their scarabs and whatnot. So maybe we did, not we, but maybe they did eat a mummy, and that was somebody incredibly significant that we've been searching for. But I mean, we're talking really bad caretaking of the mummies that were found. So really bad. So they broke their bones, they ripped out and I dare say that even that Howard Carter did a terrible job
Yeah.
of Tutankhamun's handling as well. So, So anyway, they're removed. They paint on artificial eyes because their eyes are closed. There is definitely, the dried body is washed again because you want to remove the salt. because otherwise it'll become too caustic. It'll turn it into nothing. So they put on the scented oils. They soften a little bit. It's like caretaking leather. Okay, so if leather gets too dry, you end up with it falling apart, old purses and stuff like that. So here they turn it into leather, but then they keep it like good leather, and he's ready almost for the opening of the mouth ceremony. So we realize the whole time they are incanting spells. They are putting special, like we're saying here, they've wrapped them up, could take up to 15 days, layer by layer, into each of the sections. They're putting different amulets, or they're writing spells on them. As you can see here, I put the pronunciation guide in here because I feel like a lot of people say udjat. It's ujat or wajat, where they're putting the eyes of Horus, the eye into the body for different areas of protection, scarabs, the Jed pillars. Everything is being put into the body, which is what often we see the grave robbers are just ripping the mummies apart to get all these precious antiquities out of it to sell or whatever. They actually used to be real, even though they were not concerned with the brain whatsoever. They were really concerned with like toenails and fingernails. So sometimes they would put like clips or like covers on the fingernails that could be even like gold caps to make sure that the toenails and fingernails stayed on. So they were concerned with that. Brain, who cares? But they would tie. There was also the teat or the tayet, which they would also put all over on the bodies of certain people. It was supposed to be the protection by Isis, who Isis now is now working in conjunction with still Osiris. So now we see, because they're beloved husband and wife, she now is taking part in death rituals as well. And then also they made like a glue out of resin to hold the linens in place to completely seal the body. So this is very important, and this is also where all the stuff ends up getting stolen, because they want the goods. They want the amulets, the spells, unless you hated the guy or it's somebody who was killed in a way that is to make sure he does not make it through the Duat. Because you can also write curses and stuff on it and cross out magical spells to make sure that they don't make it. But okay, let's continue. So the opening of the mouth ceremony is physically in the land of the living, done by Anubis, but in some ways it goes back to kind of like the transubstantiation, substantiation Catholic argument about like, is it the literal blood of Christ, and does it become the literal blood of Christ and the literal body of Christ during communion? In the same way, there is the same argument in ancient Egypt, where they dress like Anubis and they do the opening of the mouth ceremony so that he can eat and drink and speak in the afterlife. And is it just people who are going through the ritual dressed like Anubis, or do they actually become momentarily Anubis? Because Anubis is standing there in the room. Does he phase into them and do the ritual himself so that it actually works in the spiritual realm? That is, up to you to decide. But in this moment now, you imagine they're like they can't talk, and in that moment when the mouth is open, they can see, they can hear, they can speak, they can breathe, they can eat again. And we have to do all of this before we enter into the Zawat. Okay, so in this, the Ka and the Ba is allowed to eat, speak, and defend itself, because you have to defend yourself in the afterlife. If they forgot to do this ceremony, you are instantly not going to make it, because you will not be able to say the correct answers to the riddles that are coming up. Okay, so the burial and preservation at this point. So they put at this point, you've probably already gone through the false door, but which is only a term in the land of the living. So at this point, the body's put in the coffin. They're going to seal it up, tombs included. They also put Shabti figures, which the Shabti figures are sometimes made of wax, sometimes made of rock, whatever. They hewn these little figures that the concept is that they are going to be servants that will do whatever you want in the afterlife, that they don't get tired, they don't need to eat, they don't need to be preserved, because oftentimes they would also kill your dog, your wife, your servants, and they would put like literal bodies that needed sustenance in the afterlife and their own caretaking to make it through the Jawat. But the idea of having the Shabtis is that they did not They did not need any type of sustenance. They just would work for you. They never get hungry, never get tired, whatever. And what's funny is I used to have because I had this job where I used to train AI for certain companies and stuff like that. So I had an AI assistant assigned to me, and I named her Professor Shabti because she was basically a thoughtless, not hungry, thing that would just work for me. And that was so I always remember Shabti.
Very good.
And I say speak with affection, but they'll do whatever you want. The idea is that your ka is going to stay behind and need to eat and be fed and to have access to all of the ritual spells to give you the answers or read the stuff for a while for you. And then your ba, which takes the essence of a bird often, is going to, but not yet. You're still in your form. Is going to be able to go with you through the duat. Okay, so here we have. They're putting together, they've prepared the body, opened your mouth. They are doing, they're saying all the spells. There's the false door. They're going to put your name on a cartouche that is protected by magic. So as long as the cartouche if any one cartouche survives. So that is to say you want to write it on everything. If any one cartouche survives somewhere, you are royally protected. Of course, if you've got the amount of cartouches you have would be optimal. But if one cartouche survives, the concept is that your name is protected. Now, to get to the false door only makes sense in the land of the living because it's not a false door in the spiritual realm. It is a portal that allows your ka and your ba to go into the spiritual realm. Okay, so it is a real door, a real portal that doesn't necessitate a physicality that it can pass through in the spiritual realm, but only in the physical realm is it considered a false door because it's just basically stone that has a door drawn on it, and a physical human's not going to be able to pass through it. And that's also to keep the humans out of the land of the living, out of the land of the dead.
Okay.
So we've gone through that. The tomb temporarily is going to be the housing of the ka, to receive all of the offerings, stuff like that. And we'll get more to that. We have the ba, which is the bird that flies around. That is what we're working with in the traveling through the duat. And then the akh, not to be confused with the ankh, which means everlasting life and eternalness. But the akh is the immortal soul. So you have your ka, your ba, your akh, and your ib. Your ib is your heart. And it ensures that the deceased is going to be able to navigate the duat. It's like basically, in a sense, imagine you're going on a mission and you have somebody back at home base with all the answers, being able to walkie-talkie you what you need, where you need to go. That's what your ka is going to do.
Phone a friend or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've gone through all the 7 stages in case anybody's more interested in mummification. I have the hieroglyph, but not a hieroglyph, the wall painting of the incense being used to purify even the room. But there's the purification, the brain removal, the canopic jar, the drying of the natron, the stuffing, all the rituals and the amulets, and finally the opening of the mouth, the burial, and the walking through. Anubis takes you through. So at the moment of death, so when does Anubis arrive? At the moment of death, he's with you. The ba leaves the body. The soul is mobile. Consciousness, personality begin to rise. Anubis, who's the jackal-headed god of embalming, he is also the psychopomp. He's going to bring you through, but he appears in silence. He doesn't come across with chaos and terror, but with calmness and duty, fulfilling his sacred role. So he is there to protect you and to get you to the scales. Like I said, he's going to make sure that no outside force, as long as you do what you need to do and you have the spells and you say the words, he's going to make sure that nothing will be able to impinge on your journey and through the duat. Okay, so we talked about the false door, that it's essentially only a false door in the land of the living, but it's a true door in the spiritual realm. So it's a spiritual door. And then the bird is what? The bird is usually, which I didn't put a picture of it I should have. It's normally seen as the ba has a human head and the body of a bird, and it travels. But it'll pass gates and guardians and face. There are essences. There's 2 different iterations where you actually walk as a body, and there's another version where you walk as a human-headed bird. And then in both iterations, there seems to be a choice if you become a justified spirit as whether you want to, in the field of reeds, appear as or travel as your ba essence or as a human or a human form, type of that, which we'll get to later.
Yeah.
All right, so now symbolic, it's not just a departure, but it's the beginning of transformation. Same thing as as it says in the Bible that you're gonna have a new glorified body to enter into a different realm. So you no longer belong to the mortal world. With Anubis, the boss, like I said, protected, prepared, and led towards eternal judgment. So just to go through the terms, Anubis is the guardian, embalmer, and guide. Travels through the soul door. The false door is the magical portal. It's not physical. This moment is one of mystery, ritual, and hope. It's the first step towards eternal life.
Yeah. All right, now for some of the good stuff. Let's see if we can. I don't know how quickly we can run through these because I'd love to get a nice, concise take on this. But the 12 hours, I'd love
All
to.
right. So we got the 12 hours. So we're going to go through it. This is pretty in depth. We're going to go through what each of the hours looks like. So I'll do it. I'll do my famous speed talking. Each hours of the Duat and the Egyptian underworld. It's based on primarily on the Abduat and Book of the Gates. They're two funerary texts in the New Kingdom, because I know you like to know where it is in the history of Egypt. So this is each hour is a distinct region or trial in Ra's journey. So it's important to say that Ra is on this journey as well. Ra is on a solar bark with Set, and you are on a personal bark, or you are traveling or swimming through the same waters, but not on the same boat as Ra. So if the people who are preparing your body have given you a magical incantation for a boat, then you get a boat too, not the same boat. Later, if you're a justified spirit, you can be a guest on the solar bark and ride as a passenger, but not until you're justified. All right, let's go. Okay, so here's the first hour. So it begins right at the sunset. So Ra is entering the Western Horizon Amemtet. He's boarding his solar bark. He has his divine crew, Sia, who's perception, Heka is magic, Mayhen is the serpent protector, Ra is usually, Set is usually on there. The landscape is dark but orderly. It's a preparation zone. This is where you're divided between the Duat and the living gates. It's right on the other side of the false door. So the souls and the gods are alerted that it's time that Ra has boarded his bark. So everybody knows. All right, let's keep going. So then we start sailing through all the waters of Arnes, the sacred river of the Duat. So this is not the original river of Nun. It's not the original in the beginning. It is the different sacred river, which essentially it seems to be a river that comes from the original source. So it is kind of like that cosmic river, but it's not the direct one in which the Ben stone arose out of. It is like a tributary or whatnot that came out of it. Everybody is the protective deities and the rowers of the bark are helping Ra move through because he has his guests. You are either on a separate boat or swimming if you have to. So it's like however you can make it there. So nobody in the second hour, there are no deities that are arising to stop you on your journey, but there are magical spells that ensure that Ra's boat can continue the course as well as your own, if they prepared it for you in the land of the living. So now here is the third hour, which is the enclosure of the hidden caverns. So you're going to reach cavernous regions that are lined with walls of flame and darkness. There's going to be serpent guardians and watchers that are going to protect each chamber. And the people on the land of the living, or maybe you learned it, there's to say a difference in thought that maybe you could have studied this and you know it in the afterlife because you learned it in your living life. But then there is a secondary thought that says that your mind goes blank and you can't even remember your name unless it was written on the walls and the preparers of your body did it correctly. So there's two different thoughts. So think your thought processes here. So you could believe that you're going to have to name each of the gatekeepers to pass, which we'll go over in the future. Just a few evidences of it. This is where you start to get your judging and your testing. The secret cabin of Sokar is nearby and is a shadowy zone of silence and transition. Okay, so this is where you're starting your test, is in the third hour. Okay, the fourth hour, now you've made it into the realm of Sokar. That's meaning that you didn't get destroyed, or you had correctly identified all the names of the guardians and the warriors that were trying to stop you in hour 3. Let's say you've made it to hour 4. So the bark now is slowing down and you're into the territory of Sokar, which is the god of darkness and rebirth. So Ra leaves his boat and travels in the form of a giant serpent. You're not on the boat, so it doesn't really matter to you. But if you're trying to keep up contemporaneously, what's going on with your bark and his solar bark, he leaves his boat. The rowers are still rowing. Or the land here is mountainous, dry, and silent. It's like a lifeless desert. So Kar's realm is symbolic of a tomb, but it also could be seen as a womb, which I forgot to say earlier is that when every day when Ra successfully makes it through his solar journey, he is birthed or comes out of the vagina of Nut every night. So this womb is symbolic of, because remember we have Nut is in the night sky, and when if he makes it, he's rebirthed every day. So Ra at this time is vulnerable. So as he is in the god of darkness, he's not allowed to have any of his light power. So he can be attacked here, which is why he needs people like Set and other, the magic with Heka and all of them to travel with him, because the idea is that he would not make this journey if he had to journey alone, because there is no light and his power comes from light.
I know it's a stretch, but it makes me think of the imagery for people who believe in reincarnation. I've heard this depiction of, you're dying, you see the light, you go towards the light, and then all of a sudden
Mhm.
the light is you being born in the next life, and you're like, wait, I was just. And then I don't know. It's
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know it's
but I
only the
could see
fourth
the
hour, so it
parallelism.
doesn't really track, but it just made me think of that
Well, but
image.
there's no reincarnation in the fourth or in Egypt, so it would,
No, no,
but
just
it would make sense that they maybe if you were to parallel it with that making it to the golden or the plane of the golden reeds, it would be like reaching nirvana,
hmm
and your final iteration of that, you would be able to make it all the way through. And so I could see where that would parallel.
No, exactly, exactly. I didn't mean to
I
go off
see it.
topic.
Don't worry.
It
I'm
just was
tracking
where
with you.
I was just
Tracking.
thinking of that. Yeah.
No, yeah, no, it's wonderful. The fifth hour, Tomb of Osiris. So this is important. So Ra reaches the tomb of Osiris, the god of the dead and the ruler of Duat. Remember, it's been prepared by Anubis. Osiris lies there enthroned and preserved, his body, surrounded by the funerary gods. A fusion occurs where Ra and Osiris fuse into one. Okay. It's a symbol of death. And then as he makes his way through it, he resurrects. So in the fourth hour, he had to make it through and he had no power. And then he's coming through and he unites with Osiris. This is the theological center of the Duat journey, even though it's not it's not hour six, So Ra's light infuses with Osiris, and so remember, it wasn't allowed to shine in the fourth hour, and Osiris is all powerful now in the Duat. So when Ra's light fuses with Osiris, Osiris is able to stabilize Ra's power, and he's able to continue the journey. So this is a very important of the cycle. Okay, hour six, the waters of rebirth. This is the hour, this is the deepest part of the night. It is the darkest part of the night. It is the true midnight. And thankfully, there's extra magic, extra Heka, because he's fused with Osiris now. Because remember, in the fourth hour, not fused with Osiris, couldn't use his light. He was vulnerable to attacks. Hour five, he's fused with Osiris, so he has that like underworld power stabilization that he's able to use light power even in the darkest form of the night, which is why it's so important that he goes through that process before reaching the deepest point of the night. Because if he did not fuse with Osiris and he was not stabilized in his magic, he would be very vulnerable right now. So he does it. He's able to pass through the lake of fire, the wells of rejuvenation. Transformation begins. Ra's soul is now fusing with his own Ba, his own soul bird, forming a midnight sun. So now, even though it's the dead of midnight, there is a sun that is emerging in the Duat. The scarab beetle, Khepri, symbolizes Ra's rebirth, which we often see kind of that scarab with like the Isis wings on it. It's both a moment of death and resurrection. It's symbolized for deceased souls that if they've passed the judgments that we're going to talk about, they're going to be renewed in their power here. Just like when Ra was vulnerable for attack, he was stabilized by Osiris. They're going to have a renewed power here underneath the midnight sun of Osiris and Ra. I'm sorry, of Ra.
Wow.
Okay, now here is the battle. It's time. We've powered up. We've made sure that Osiris is not vulnerable. I'm sorry, we've made sure that Ra is not vulnerable anymore because of his power with Osiris fusing. We now have the midnight sun established, so he's at his height of the power, even though it's the darkest part of the night. We're going into hour 7, where he has to fight Apophis or Apep. It starts attacking the bark, trying to sink the bark, trying to stop the rebirth, because if he doesn't make it through the night by the 12th hour, when it's time for the sun to go up, then Apophis wins. So he's a massive serpent. He's very similar to the snake in what do you say? The snake in Norse mythology as well.
Okay.
So it's that type of snake that goes all the way around it. So it's a massive serpent snake, which normally I know the name of off the top of my head in Norse mythology. At the end of it, I'll be like, I remember. He coils around the river at night, although the snake in Norse mythology is so big it goes around the whole world. So this is smaller by comparison. Set is the one. So Set is the one who stands at the bow of the boat and he slashes Apophis with a spear. So he is protecting everybody, and who's because there's other people on the boat. There's people who's rowing for him and stuff like that. Ra's back, but Set is the one who goes and fights. That's why it's so crazy that Osiris, in Set's mind, why Osiris is so venerated when he's doing this every night. Anyway, there's magical spells, fire spells that the gods that help defeat Apophis. This is the climax of the cosmic battle. This is where it all lies on. So there have been times where Ra was almost killed during one of the nightly battles, and like I said, it seems counterproductive that Set becomes the iteration of chaos, but chaos is subdued every night by Set. So Ra is using chaos to subdue chaos because it is in the same capacity where you imagine it's the mirror's reflection of light doesn't work in the light, and the sunshine doesn't work in the darkness of the afterlife. So it had to be imbued with Osiris's stabilizing power and make a midnight sun. So in the same capacity, the reason why because Set is not as powerful as Apophis, the reason why Set is able to overcome Apophis because his power is stabilized also with the light of Ra. So we have a light and chaos that overcomes darkness and chaos. So it's a couple of things that need to merge or they will not be successful. So it has to be done correct every night.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting, that the legend of this all has to do with the process for passing into the afterlife. But at the same time, every single day, every single night, this is what Egyptian culture was thinking
Yeah.
about in the depths of night. It's interesting. It's like this was a daily routine, a daily act to think about.
And
Uh,
there were like temples and stuff. Oh, and one thing I didn't say. So anyway, there's temples everywhere, and there are people who are working around the clock to do certain offerings and certain incantations, rituals, or spells during, if you're working in with a night, a night temple, then you're doing stuff at night. But sometimes there were tents set up to do the embalming, and all the tents set up around Egypt to bombing of the dead body were considered they then became considered sacred temples of Anubis while they were erected to do the embalming. So you could at any time you could have lots and lots of Anubis temples going at the same time, depending on the amounts of death.
right, right.
Okay, 8th hour. So we've gone through the hidden caverns. We've made it. We've defeated Apophis. So now it's becoming narrow, and you're going into the Chamber of Secrets. This hour now is you've already made it. You have to protect the solar bark from spiritual sabotage. So now Apophis is defeated, but now it's just the point of getting Ra and his bark all the way through until daylight, and basically the rebirth of through Nut. So there are different deities that are going to guard him, and you'll see that Isis plays a part in this now. So Sekhet, Neith, and Isis are going to help guard Ra the whole way through. There's going to be multiple fire-breathing serpents, not as big, obviously, as Apophis, but they have to either be appeased because you've answered a spell or a riddle or said their name or did something that they wanted, or you have to physically overcome them, or spiritually, I guess, overcome them. Souls that failed in life are depicted in torment, warning of the unworthy. So this is a very horrible realm right now. The 8th hour is very bad for you if you were wicked, because everybody is going to come out of the woodworks, so to speak, to attack you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to be, so if you are bad, and we said, and if the people knew you were bad, they definitely would have replaced your heart by now with a, some sort of amulet, a heart scarab, because they can sense it. If you have your original wicked heart with you, they will know, and they will, just like they say that they smell fear, they will definitely smell your wickedness, and they will come at you with everything. So this is a terrible time. Um, if you have been a bad person.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go hour nine. Hour nine is the judgment of the dead. Um, the Ra's boat passes by the fields of the judged. Okay, there are souls that are waiting in the Hall of Ma'at, which we'll come back to. Anubis oversees it. The hearts, Thoth, but he's not allowed to speak. He places the heart on the scale. Thoth is going to record the outcome. If your heart is heavier than the feather of Ma'at, then Amit is going to devour you. You're going to be condemned. You're going to cease to exist. Righteous souls are prepared for to be justified and rewarded and transformed. And this is the hour that connects with Ra's journey with the journey of every human soul. So you have to be judged. So I assume that if you got destroyed in hour two, that you just like phase over to here because you get judged anyway, because it has to be fair. And so it's not going to go well if you got eaten in hour three, but So now we're at the hour of the 10th hour, which is the iteration of heaven, or the New Jerusalem and the Judeo-Christian ideology, is that Ra now is passing. Sunshine is up. It's almost, the sun is almost out. He's going to illuminate the field of reeds, or as some people say, the golden reeds. The Seket Aaru is a paradise for the justified souls. Here, it's basically like a beautiful paradise version of perfected Egypt. They're going to have, farm and worship, and they live under the joy of Osiris. Essentially, it is what Osiris was giving the land of the living. Now it is the perfect, the ideal of perfection, run by Osiris, and there's no pain, there's no hunger, you still are supposed to, your cause still being fed, but it seems like if you make it justified all the way through, it becomes less important. And Ra is going to pass through the land. And in some iterations, he's going to be dropping off souls, because you'll see at the end, you have three ways you can make it to this field, to Aaru. And if you choose at this point as a justified soul, you can ride on the bark, the solar bark. So he's like dropping off. He's like a fairy, like not like a ferry, like a little being, but like a boat that takes you. He's towing the line from the Hall of Ma'at to Aaru. Let's go to the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Here's the final gate of darkness. This is the last major obstacle before dawn. The solar bark is traveling through the coils of a snake, Mehen for protection. So it's doing it, it's helping it. So it's keeping it inside the snake, so no outside things are going to get it. It's not like nefarious. Ra's form is completely rejuvenated. He's in his full power. He's even radiating hidden energy. All the enemies of Ma'a are bound, burned, or banished. The gods are preparing for the sun's return. People are worshiping. Songs of resurrection are being sung. But we're not quite done. There's the 12th hour. The 12th hour is the actual dawn and rebirth. So Ra emerges from the body, the vaginal canal of Nut. She's literally reborn every night from the sky goddess in the eastern horizon. Scarab, Khepri, as imaged here, pushes the solar disk into the morning sky. That would be the imagery and the concept of the sun coming up. So we have Khonsu with the moon. We have Khepri, which looks like this with the Isis wings, pushing the sun back up into the sky. Daylight is returned. It means we've abated chaos another day. Order is restored. Chaos is defeated. The journey is complete. Either you have been eaten by Amit, or you've made it to the field of reeds. You've made it through death, judgment, renewal, and triumph. But the cycle, so also the concept is, so the cycle begins again at sunset. It's an eternal rhythm of resurrection. So that also goes to say that if you die at, let's just hypothetically say you die at sunrise, and for some reason your mummification is complete on a different day on sunrise, you got to wait around until the solar bark takes until sunset. So you have to wait around for that journey to begin, and then you'll walk. I don't know if you stand before in your tomb still, or if you walk through the false door, but you're waiting for your boat or however you're going to make it through. Because you can have spells that say that you want to travel as a bird, and you can travel via ba form and not need a boat. But I feel like most people want the boat, but you have to wait until sunset. So I'm gonna
I have like an interesting connection with this. I remember when I was a
tell me.
kid, my first experience with death. Like my uncle died. I found out at night, like right before I went to bed, and it's like that sunset feel. But I remember the next morning looking at the sunrise and just thinking, he's not here to see the sunrise, this new day.
Yeah,
I still carry that on such a regular basis. It's before I was exposed to any of this information. I always had this weird parallel to sunset and sunrise with this life and death kind of imagery. It's interesting just how eternal that is in a sense, right? It's like the human psyche.
really.
Just I don't know. And it's
In the Christian iteration, there's no darkness. It's like eternal sunlight.
hmm,
And so it's interesting because the Egyptian version of it has a lightness and a dark, whereas in Christianity, the lightness and the dark are separated eternally. So, there's darkness and fire and condemnation and pain and hell. And then the New Jerusalem or heaven is always light, always pain free, always the field of reeds type of thing. So
right.
it's
Just
like,
that like completely peaceful, ideal world that you could,
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm just going to briefly go through because as I said to you before we started, I am very, I do believe that you shouldn't read the spells I believe that there is power in ancient Egypt, and I believe it's wicked power, even if they seem like they're good, um, if they're good goddesses, in iterations. I do believe in the Judeo-Christian God, and that these would be demons that are empowered or Nephilim or whatever. So I think it is very important that even if as an archaeologist or an Egyptologist, that as you're studying these, not to be reciting the complete spells, not to be reciting. So I've purposely left out some of the spells so that you do not word curse yourself, that you do not come into agreement with evil or give evil a to give evil a right over your life, because like I said, it's harder to get rid of them than it is to unknowingly, accidentally, or unintentionally invite them into your life and chain them to you. So I've gone through this in a way, not that I don't have the spells, but that I did not want to verbally read them, number one, and I didn't want to give these spells to other people. I mean, if you're really into the dark arts and whatnot, you can find them in the Book of the Dead and other books. But I just wanted to preface that. So you've gone through the Duat. We're just going to go through the names in certain hours. I know you want briskly through them so you can see what type of things to give you an understanding of what you need to be prepared for. So let's go through, and I'm going to tell you the names, and I'm going to explain what negative confessions are.
Okay.
Let's go to the next page. So the importance of names and passwords. Oh, let's go back one real quick.
Gotcha.
That during the night you're going to say them. You have to speak the secret names of the guardians. You have to identify them to divine epitaphs, and you have to recite the spells found in the funerary texts of books of the dead. If you don't say it correctly, you don't make it through. There's also a belief system in ancient Egypt that if you learn the true name of a god, that you get power over them, which is how you're able to defeat them. But in a lot of iterations, it says that you are only allowed to use the true name of the god if the god themselves tells it to you, or someone who truly loves the god or is loved by the god tells it to you. So it's not like anybody in the world gets it. So how that kind of ties in seems a little bit different here, because here it's like as long as it's in the spell, you get to use it. But in a different sense, outside the journey of the Duat, if you were able to, I guess, in the living, learn the true name of a god or goddess, that was either you tricked them into telling you directly, or someone who loved them or was loved by them gave it to you, then you got power over this god. So they were heavily guarded secrets. The secret, the true name. So these may be other names. So if you learn the true name that the mother gave the son or the mother gave the child at birth, that gave you power over the god as well. Just go to the next page. So Apophis, his name was he who was not. That's what you would call him. He was a chaotic serpent. That's why Ra's chopping him up on the solar bark, but you still have to make it through independently. and you do not have the force to cut him up. You're not going to be able to, you're not a god. You're not going to be able to establish that type of presence. So he was nameless because he's chaos, he's the void, he's darkness. And so he was unnamed, a force of uncreation. So sometimes spells refer to him as, you could call him the enemy of Ra, he who was not, the coiled one who dwelt in darkness. Any of those names would be correct names to call him. And sometimes you would have to, depending on the situation you were in, choose the correct one even out of those three to call him at that time. So if he's coiled, you would call him the coiled one who is in the darkness, you know. If he's in the process, if you're passing by while he's in the process of fighting Ra, you call him the enemy of Ra. So when you get through the first gate, the name of the first gate, and it makes sense too, is he who illuminates the beginning. So a lot of these are very on the nose. But if you don't know the exact verbiage and the exact words, you know, you're out of luck. There's a guardian who stands by with fiery knives. This is the password you would say. I am he who knows the paths of the sun. You have to say that verbatim. And the sun being Ra, saying, I am ready to make it through the Duat. I know the path that the solar bark is going to take, and I know the passwords. That's the very first thing, right through the false door. You're going to say that, or you get fiery knives. There's an identification spell, which, you know, I'm not going to read it, but I will say the part on the bottom, but I won't say the full spell. From spell 144, I am the one who came forth by day. I have not been turned back at the gate. I've spoken the names of the watchers, and I pass in peace. So you haven't invoked any other god. You're just letting them know that I am here just to make it to the scales. I'm not here to cause problems. It needs to be.
There was what, 42 deities you had to speak to?
Yeah,
That's a long list to memorize.
and that's why it's important that your Ka is still in the tomb with all of the stuff written on the walls and in your tomb to be able to, like we said, walkie-talkie it over to you.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if the Ka knows it in its mind, like reads it at that second, then it populates into your mind in the Ba, and you'll know the answer.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next gate, or the next. So now we're going to the gates of fire. This is through hours 2 through 4. 4 being when you know, Ra's at his most weakest point. Each gate has guarded by fire-breathing serpents and goddesses with burning torches, so we see lots of fire. The gate's name, you would need to know these names, are Flame Swallower, who hates falsehood, She who burns the unworthy. Sample guardian names are Kareth, the Scorcher, Tepis, she of the sharp flame. And the passwords, like we said, have to be verbatim. They must be recited exactly, or the guardian will cut off your head and burn your soul. But it seems that it says, like, there's differentiations where it seems like sometimes they're able to just kill you here and you cease to exist. And then there's a second part that says that you still have to somehow make it to the Hall of Judgment, and that Ma'at, Thoth, and Anubis, and Ammit in this case also still have to judge you. So I don't know if you just like teleport over to Ma'at and you instantly get destroyed by Ammit, but you need to pass, in order to make it to the Field of Reeds, you have to pass through this entire journey, and it's still possible that your heart can be eaten by a Ma'at when you get there. So you have to pass through the whole journey and the scale weighing. So if you fail here, you fail there, you know?
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. That's hours 2 through 4. This is spell for the gatekeeper. So you'd have to know in the death spell 146, to each gate, the soul must say, I know you, I know your name, I know the name of the God who guards you. And then you have to tell them the correct answers. Each guardian must be praised and acknowledged by their name. So you say this, you make a promise of it, and then you provide the name and the guard who guards you. And the formula repeats, open for me, for I am pure of mouth and clean of hands. I have not spoken lies. I have not caused pains or pain. This is the, like a negative confession, when you keep saying, these are the things I haven't done, as opposed to saying, these are the things I have done. Okay, the secret name of Ra, spell 17. So this is a powerful passage in the Book of the Dead. You need it. It says, I am Ra, who created himself in the primeval waters. This also would be Atum in this version, this version of the mythology. And my secret name is hidden within me. So you'd have to say that verbatim. Only Isis learned Ra's secret name by tricking him, which gave her magical powers over him, which we talked about too. And if you could somehow trick Ra, and because Isis loves Ra, she technically, Isis loves Osiris. So she went and tricked Ra to help Osiris type of situation. So she if for some reason Ra loves her or she loves Ra, which I don't think she does. I think she's more of an Osiris fan myself. But if let's just say that she was loved by Ra and or the inverse, she'd be able to give you his name and you would have power over Ra too. But she did this as an emissary for her husband. It says the myth underscores how sacred and dangerous true names were, which when we were talking about Moses too, I talked about how sometimes there was a name that you only told your baby at birth. And then there were names that everybody else called him, like Moses was called Jekuthiel by his mom, but that might not be his secret name, and Moses by Bethiah. But in the same concept, there was definitely, and humans were probably, the land of the living was doing this too, giving a secret name only to the child that maybe you might share with your wife or somebody, and everybody else knew the name you were commonly called by because you didn't want to sign that power over to anybody.
Yeah. Like another terrible parallel. It's like people have like their hood names. They don't want you to know
Oh
your
yeah,
government and everything. It's like the power of the law to know your
it's
government
true.
given name. It's like it's such a
That's how you
weird
go to jail.
parallel, but it's
But
interesting.
true, it is exactly the same thing.
Yeah, because it's like it's like my full name, you know too much. Then
Hmm.
it's very interesting. Even in today's society, there's still a desire and a need
Parallel.
for that in some ways.
Yeah, the anonymity. So
Yep.
here you actually get to name yourself as a god. You know, as you pass through, the deceased often had to identify themselves as gods in order to make it through all the steps. So you might say something like, I am Thoth, and then you talk about who Thoth is. I am Thoth, the judge of true truth. I am Osiris, justified before gods, because it was true. He didn't do anything wrong. I am Horus, son of Isis, who opened the way. These were not lies, but there are ritual identifications who you're identifying with. So they're not telling these people that I am this person, but they're saying that I have these qualities of me, and so I am assigned to this God. And it would merge their souls with attributes, divine attributes. All right, let's keep rolling. So here's the negative confessions, and this is important. It's just like in Christianity where you have to confess, you need to confess all of your sins before God because anything that hasn't been confessed, you is held against you because otherwise it's drowned in the sea of forgetfulness. You get everlasting mercy and a soul that's washed white like wool. So here is kind of like the opposite situation where when you're entering the hall of Ma'at, the deceased must name the 42 judges by name, all 42 of them. So your cause working overtime in that tomb. Um, a sin, which wasn't a word really in the Egyptian context, that they did not commit. So let's just say you're a really wicked, evil person who has just done horrendous things. You need to find 42 things that you didn't do. So let's say you're a murderer, and you've raped people and you've done whatever, then those you're going to be like, well, I fed the poor, you know, I have not starved someone to death. I have not drowned anyone, and you're going to make all, they have to be negative confessions now. So you're going to choose, you can't have been wicked, but there's like a semantic wordplay to get around it. You're going to choose 42 things that you haven't done. It's almost the way how people with Christianity like to be like, I'm going to just make my way to heaven anyway without Jesus. It's not like I'm a murderer. I haven't killed anybody. It's like the same type of mentality where you're going to try to word play your way out of justice and be like, and just talk about, you have to have 42 things that you haven't done. So if you have killed, you're going to choose something else. But you're going to say, I have not killed to the judge Fenty. I have not stolen to the judge Kafti. So it says that both the spiritual password and these are moral declarations. So definitely you can't lie right now
Very
because you're in
good.
the hall of truth.
Yeah.
So you have to be wise and you need to choose 42 things that you haven't done, and each judge is kind of looking for a certain type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so where it says I haven't killed, you might say I haven't drowned anyone because that's a way to not have killed someone by drowning, and semantically it works, but you still may have killed a lot of people. So each part of the body, it has to be named and purified. So there's more names to remember. My head is the head of Ra. My spine is the backbone of Set. So he's still being used positively here. My fingers are the fingers of the great Ennead. Naming the body was like weaving the soul to connect it to divinity. It's like making your body um, into like a holy version of it by each body part gets a name that's named to a god type of situation. And now it's been rebirthed into a something that can be justified and enter into, because you with your human body would not be able to enter into the field of golden reeds. You need to have your body basically replaced by deities, and by naming each of them and taking on their divine characteristics, your body is now remade into their venerations, and now you are considered a justified spirit that be able to enter into the Hall of Reeds or the Field of Reeds. All right, let's keep going. So the 12 hours, it says just a cycle of knowledge and passage at every stage. Knowledge is protection. Someone has to have prepared you. So if people don't prepare you and you just die on the side of the road and your body's rotting, even if you're the best person in the world, you're not going to make it. It's like having a good lawyer. It doesn't matter what type of crook you are.
Yeah.
As long as you got a good lawyer, they're going to get out of jail free card. You have to know the name of demons, guardians, places. The boats have to be memorized. The key themes are names give power, speaking gives access. So if they forgot to open your mouth, you're out of luck. You have to have the opening of the mouth ceremony. And again, Anubis can't make them do it. He can stand there, he can realize that it's being omitted, but he can't force his hand. He is just, and he just makes sure that no outside forces preclude you from things that you've actually gotten passage to. So if somebody forgets to open the mouth, then you are not going to make it almost immediately because you won't be able to identify the names right on the other side of the other side of the false door. So silence or ignorance brings you just into oblivion, and the soul who knows the names is not forgotten and will rise again with the sun in the true iteration. You'll make it through the whole 12-hour path.
Yeah.